Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel Scary Story. Tonight I'm going to tell you a story that might make you think twice before taking a shortcut through the woods. So, settle in, turn down the lights, and listen closely. My grandfather used to tell me stories about the woods behind his house. He'd lived in that old farmhouse his entire life, and he knew every twist and turn of the paths that snaked through the ancient trees. But there was one path he always warned me about. He called it the Whisperwood Path. He said it wasn't on any map, and that it had a way of changing. One day it might lead you straight to the old quarry, and the next it might lead you nowhere at all. Of course, as a teenager, I thought he was just being dramatic. To me, it was just a faster way to get to my friend Leo's house on the other side of the forest. I'd walked it a dozen times without any trouble. It was a narrow, winding trail, barely wide enough for one person, with thick, moss-covered trees leaning in on either side, their branches interlocking overhead to form a kind of natural tunnel. Even on the brightest days, it was always dim and cool on that path. The day it all happened started like any other summer day. The air was thick and heavy with the promise of a thunderstorm. I'd spent the afternoon at Leo's, and by the time I was ready to head home, the sky had turned a bruised shade of purple and gray. Leo's mom offered to give me a ride, but I waved her off. I was a stubborn 16-year-old. I told them I'd be home in 20 minutes if I took the path. Taking the road would take at least an hour. Besides, I kind of liked the idea of walking through the woods as a storm rolled in. I thought it would be atmospheric. I was an idiot. As soon as I stepped onto the Whisperwood Path, the air grew still. The usual sounds of the forest, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of unseen animals, the distant hum of the highway, all vanished. It was like stepping into a soundproof room. The only sound was the soft crunch of my own footsteps on the damp earth and fallen leaves. The trees seemed to press in closer than I remembered, their bark dark and gnarled, looking almost like twisted faces in the fading light. A shiver ran down my spine, but I told myself I was just being spooked by the impending storm. I walked for what felt like 10 minutes, expecting to see the familiar clearing that marked the halfway point. But it never came. The path just kept winding deeper into the woods, which was strange. I knew this trail. It wasn't this long. I started to walk a little faster, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. The sky was getting darker, and the first distant rumble of thunder echoed through the silent woods. That's when I heard it. A soft whisper, like the wind rustling through leaves, but there was no wind. The air was dead calm. The whisper was too faint to make out any words, but it seemed to come from all around me. I stopped, straining to listen. Silence. I started walking again. Faster this time, and the whispering returned. A little louder, a little closer. It sounded like multiple voices, all murmuring at once, their words overlapping into a meaningless, sibilant hiss. My heart started to pound against my ribs. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and weak. "Is anyone there?" The only answer was the whispering, which now seemed to follow me, keeping pace with my steps. I broke into a jog, my backpack bouncing uncomfortably against my shoulders. The whispering grew more urgent, the hissing sounds almost sounding like my name, stretched out and distorted. Panic began to set in. The path was changing. I was sure of it. Familiar landmarks were gone. The old, lightning-scarred oak tree I always used as a marker was nowhere to be seen. The trail ahead looked exactly the same as the trail behind me, an endless, dim tunnel of gnarled trees. I felt like I was running on a treadmill, trapped in an endless loop of forest. Then the path split. This had never happened before. The Whisperwood Path was a single trail. There had never been a fork. One path veered slightly to the left, looking darker and more overgrown. The other continued straight, but it seemed to narrow even further, the trees on either side almost touching. The whispering seemed to be urging me to take the left path, growing louder and more insistent whenever I glanced in that direction. My grandfather's words echoed in my head. The path has a way of changing. He'd also said, "If you ever get lost in there, son, just stop. Stand still. Don't let it lead you." So I stopped. I stood right at the fork, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my mind racing. The whispering swirled around me, a chaotic symphony of sibilant sounds. I closed my eyes, trying to block it out, trying to remember the way the path was supposed to be. I pictured the familiar route in my mind, the gentle curve to the right, the big, flat rock, the cluster of ferns. When I opened my eyes, the left path was gone. It had simply vanished. There was only a thick, impenetrable wall of trees where the fork had been just moments before. Only the straight path remained. A wave of cold relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. I hadn't imagined it. The path had tried to trick me, to lead me somewhere else. I didn't run anymore. I walked slowly and deliberately, keeping my eyes fixed straight ahead. The whispering didn't stop, but it seemed to change. It sounded less like a lure and more like frustration. It was angry. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath fogging in front of me, even though it was a warm summer evening. Up ahead, I saw a flicker of light. A warm, yellow light. My grandfather's house. I'd never been so happy to see that old porch light in my life. I picked up my pace, my legs feeling heavy and numb. The whispering intensified, rising to a cacophony of hisses and what sounded like guttural snarls. It felt like something was right behind me, its breath cold on my neck. I didn't dare look back. I just focused on the light, that little beacon of safety in the suffocating darkness. I burst out of the woods and into my grandfather's backyard, stumbling and nearly falling to my knees on the manicured lawn. The moment I crossed the tree line, the whispering stopped. Complete silence. The normal sounds of the evening rushed back in. The crickets, the wind in the trees, the rumble of thunder, now much closer. The air was warm and humid again. I scrambled up the back steps and threw open the door. My grandfather was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea in his hands. He looked up at me, his face calm. He didn't seem surprised to see me, disheveled and pale as a ghost. "Took the Whisperwood path, did you?" he asked, his voice low. I could only nod, trying to catch my breath. He just took a slow sip of his tea. "It tries to lead you astray," he said, as if commenting on the weather. "Tries to get you turned around, take you somewhere you're not meant to go. It feeds on fear, gets stronger the more scared you are." He looked me over. "You did good to stand still. Most people run, and when they run, they get lost for good. I never found out what was at the end of that other path. My grandfather never offered any more information, and I was too terrified to ask. I never took that shortcut again. In fact, I avoided those woods for years. Sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind is just right, I think I can still hear a faint whispering coming from the direction of the forest. And I know that the path is still there, waiting, changing, and hoping for someone else to get lost. So, if you're ever walking through the woods and the path seems to change, if you hear whispers on the wind when there is no breeze, remember my story. Stand still. Don't let it lead you, because some paths aren't meant to be taken. Thank you for listening to tonight's story here on Scary Story. I hope it gave you a good chill. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next tale of terror. Until next time, stay safe. And whatever you do, stay out of the Whisperwood.